We know we have to remember.
We have to constantly remind ourselves that these things happened and that they could happen again.
I remember, as it were, yesterday.
I heard the shots.
My father was killed.
This was the first time terrorism was seen on the worldwide stage.
And this was the Olympic Games, and hey, this wasn't right.
Let us not forget what happened here in 1972, so that it will never happen again.
It was the first time the Summer Olympics were held in Germany. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis used the 1936 Games to promote their ideals of racial supremacy and anti-Semitism. While the Games went on, Hitler celebrated and then led the world into a devastating war and the murder of 6 million Jews. "36 years later, the Olympics were back in Germany.
I was 11 years old at the time. Each day we go there to the Olympic area. It was fabulous. It was a wonderful feeling to represent a free and democratic country.
It was an opportunity to present a different face of Germany, not a martial Germany, but a peaceful Germany.
The Olympic Village in Munich was just a place that was mesmerizing because you saw all these people from the whole world and everybody was talking and playing together exactly what the Olympic Village should be like.
The games were exciting. Everything was perfect. Everything worked on time. And it was just marvelous. And then this happened.
It was about 4 or 5 in the morning, and I heard the shots. And I thought to myself, I've been out here several days. That's not a door slamming. That's a gun.
Earlier, Palestinians dressed as athletes, carrying guns and hand grenades in their gym bags, were standing outside the Olympic Village, looking to get in.
They came to the wall. In the same minute, there was a group of Americans coming back from a party, accidentally met the Palestinian fighters in the wall. And they help each other to jump over the wall, and they are laughing, and the Americans even take the bags full of guns and bombs.
Once over the fence, the Palestinians made their way into the building at 31 Connolly Strasse. They broke into one of the dorm rooms and were confronted by Israeli wrestling coach Moshe Weinberg, who tried to fight them off. The Palestinians stopped him with a gun.
They shot him through his face. They just got shot here in the face. You know, we saw all these pictures.
Weinberg survived and became the first hostage.
They asked him, where are all the Israelis? Where? In which apartment? And he took them to the third apartment, because in the third apartment were all the strong guys, like Romano and all the weightlifters and the wrestlers and everything. He took them there. And they took all of them back to the first building where the coaches were, where my husband was. And there they were kept hostage.
The Palestinians now had 11 Israeli hostages. Among them, the gravely injured Moshe Weinberg, who again went after his captors. He was joined by weightlifter Yosef Romano. Weinberg knocked one Palestinian unconscious and slashed another with a knife. Romano was able to wound a third, but the Palestinians regained control, shooting the 2 Israelis, killing Weinberg. Night gave way to dawn, and word of the attack began to make its way through the Olympic Village.
Somewhere around 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock, very early, I get a call, and it's from Howard Cosell. And he said, "My young friend, you listen closely to me. Arab terrorists have invaded the Israeli compound." And I'm thinking, yeah, right, Howard, leave me alone, not funny. And I hung up the phone.
Around 6 a.m., the press began covering the story.
There were a whole bunch of us about 90 yards from the Israeli compound.
At 7:40 a.m., the hostage takers released their ransom letter.
They said that they wanted 200 Palestinian prisoners freed from the prison, or else they would start killing the Israelis, one after the other.
Their deadline, 9 a.m. The deadline came and went. Negotiators pushed the deadline back to noon. Then to 1 p.m. Then 3 p.m. At 4 p.m., German Foreign Minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher offered himself as a hostage in exchange for the Israelis. The leader of the Palestinians refused. German negotiators demanded to see the captive Israelis.
First the curtain was opened and then the window was opened, and suddenly I see my husband standing in front of the window. He could speak German, so he was also the spokesman of the hostages to the crisis team that was gathered downstairs. I could see that he was tied with his hands behind his back, and he didn't have his glasses on. And I found it so humiliating because I knew that he couldn't see without his glasses on, and he was standing there in his undershirt and with his hands tied.
Olympic officials and the German security forces had no idea what to do. They were completely unprepared, untrained, and unequipped.
They tried to rescue them, and they had all kinds of things that they were doing there, you know, like sending policemen dressed up like athletes.
Cameras broadcast live as the police moved in.
So I could see these policemen on the rooftops. Also the terrorists could see it, because they were also watching TV.
When police realized their mistake, they called off the operation and tried to calm the Palestinians. After many hours of tense negotiations, the Palestinians and Germans finally came to an agreement. The terrorists and their captives were to be flown to Cairo for further negotiations on Arab ground. The Germans saw this as their last chance to save the Israeli athletes.
And at some point, a bus arrives. And we can barely make out shadows of people being led into a bus.
The buses took the Palestinians and their hostages to helicopters waiting nearby.
I can remember personally during this night to hear the helicopters starting, and we knew who is inside there.
I knew that that was it. All the time that they are in the Olympic Village and the focus of the world is there, they have a chance. If they're being taken to some way out, small airfield, that's the end of them.
They move with the helicopters to the airport. It's a military airport. The Germans was prepared to attack them when they enter.
Waiting at the airport was a Boeing 727. Inside, German police officers dressed as flight crew. Around the airport, German snipers. And just outside the entrance gates, 50 uniformed policemen. Inside the control tower, the crisis command team. Standing nearby was the head of Israeli intelligence, Zvi Zamir, authorized only as an observer. These excerpts are from his official report to Defense Secretary Moshe Dayan and Prime Minister Golda Meir on September 6th.
When they arrived, two of the Palestinians went to the civilian plane to be sure that nothing happened. And the mistake was that they went alone without taking hostages with them. This is from Palestinian point of view. So on their way back, the German snipers killed them.
Zamir's recollection was different. One terrorist killed immediately, while the second survived long enough to continue fighting.
Immediately, the other Palestinian fighter shoot back. And there was a military exchange shooting for 3 hours.
Zamir reported one dissolution after another. Police snipers armed with only handguns. Fighters more numerous than expected. Lack of reinforcements. Communications and logistics breakdowns.
At one point there was a huge explosion. And you could see flames and everything, so one of the helicopters was set alight. They threw hand grenades in there. And nobody could say what was happening.
The first information that the hostages are liberated.
There was a certain time that we were sure that the rescue operation was successful. So like for 1 hour, everybody in Israel was very happy.
The official spokesman of the German government said that on national television. All the Israelis are saved and all the terrorists are killed.
I'm very glad that as far as we can see now, this police action was successful.
So pandemonium broke out in my house. You know, my father opened a champagne bottle and then everybody was starting to call and kiss and blah, blah, blah. I said, no. I said, I am not convinced of anything until I hear Andre.
We've just gotten the final word. You know, when I was a kid, my father used to say, our greatest hopes and our worst fears are seldom realized. Our worst fears have been realized tonight. They have now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
To this day, I think those were the saddest words I have ever heard spoken on any event that I ever covered. That's for sure.
The whole city of Munich, I would say, whole Germany was in a deep shock. It was a shock for us personally. It was a personal shock.
9 Israelis, along with German policeman Anton Fliegerbauer, were killed in the firefight at Fürstenfeldbruck Airport. The Olympics stopped, briefly, for a memorial service for the slain Israelis.
We knew of acts of terrorism, but not in this context.
It's the first time outside the border of Israel that a terror attack took place. They were purely civilians that didn't do anything to anyone.
Something was totally destroyed. You can really do so much harm to something which is trying to bring people together, talking about peace and friendship, and you just do the contrary.
Every civilized person recoils in horror.
Avery Brundage gave a speech in the stadium and declared that the games will go on.
Protesters marched against the decision.
How can the games go on after a tragedy like this? We thought it was terrible and disgusting and disrespectful, typical of what a crusty old Avery Brundage would do.
The games must go on, and we must...
Well, you know, 42 years later, that's the way we think now. If they had stopped the games, the terrorists would have won.
The 20th Olympiad continued. The surviving members of the Israeli teams went home. But for the families of the victims, that decision to go forward turned a blind eye to what happened.
After the ceremony, they asked those that survived, there are a number of people that survived of the Israeli athletes, if they could go back to the rooms of those that were killed and gather their belongings. So I said, okay, I'll pick up Andre's stuff. And they said, no, you cannot go there, because in his room they were kept hostage, and that's where they killed Yossi Romano, in that room. And I said, yes, but I will go there. I want to see the place where my husband spent the last hours of his life. So I went back to the apartment and I opened the door. There's a staircase and I had to go up because he was on the second floor. And the blood was coming down where they had shot Romano. I went up to the room and I stood there. There were 4 big holes in the wall where they had shot the rifle. I cannot even describe the chaos that was in that room. 8 people had been tied with their hands and their legs to the table, to the bed. They didn't let them go to the bathroom. There, Yossi Romano was shot. It was blood all over the place. It doesn't go together with the Olympic Games. It doesn't.
Rayed Othman recalls the events of September 5th from the Palestinian perspective.
One of the reasons why they did it is to introduce the Palestinian case, issue, problems to the world.
When this took place, the international community and the world did not pay attention, unfortunately, to the Palestinian case and the demands to live in freedom and independently. But after that event, most of the international community paid attention.
We manage most of our goals in the Munich activity. Okay, we didn't release the prisoners, but we manage all of our goals that we want from Munich activity. This is what Abu Iyad himself said, and this is the highest person who are responsible for this activity.
The Palestinians never wanted to use force or violence as a tool only for the sake of using it. All of the struggle since 1965 and until today has been taking place in order to get freedom for our people.
There was a very high restriction to the people who entered, to the Palestinians, not to be violent, not to kill any of the hostages.
You're talking here about clear demands and conditions that would lead to a solution.
It was a clear order from the leadership in different levels that you have to go and negotiate to release 236 prisoners.
We know that force was used back then and there were victims on both sides.
But killing was the last thing that they can do.
That interpretation of history is at odds with the evidence revealed since the events of 72.
באחד המסמכים לפני 20 שנה קיבלנו תמונות פתולוגיות קשות מאוד. אנקי ואני ישבנו אחד מול השנייה ואמרנו, אנקי, אני לא מסוגלת להראות את זה למשפחות. לא מסוגלת. תמונות קשות, קשות, קשות.
These pictures, revealed for the first time some 20 years after the attack, showed details far more cruel and painful than anyone had been led to believe. Yosef Romano did not die immediately after being shot. As he lay on the floor, the Palestinians castrated him and left him to bleed to death in front of his teammates.
Justice has to be done for these people because they didn't come with guns. They were not on the battlefield. They were not trying to fight an enemy. They came to the peaceful, joyful brotherhood games in Munich. And this is what happened to them. This is how they spent the last hours in fear and being humiliated, being tortured, being castrated. Somebody is going to take responsibility for what happened to these people in the middle of the Olympic Village. Tell me what happened. I think I have the right to know.
Upon hearing the news of torture used during the Munich attacks, Ziad Zayad responded with the following letter. Rayed Othman did not reply when asked for comment.
The German government kept saying to me, we don't have any information. Now, I'm from Holland, and I know the German mentality. Everything is documented. So I said, it cannot be that you don't have this information. Of course, the Bavarian government, the federal government, everybody had been lying about the fact that they didn't have the information. And how did I find out? 20 years after knocking at every door, at every possible venue. Don't even ask me what I did in order to get that information. But I could not get the official documents. 20 years afterwards, I gave an interview for the German television. And I'm talking about that we are not getting all the information. After I got back to Israel, somebody called from the archives of the court. And he sent me 80 pages of the investigation and everything. And he said, there are thousands of documents that they haven't given to you. I mean, 3 walls full of files, 900 forensic pictures, thousands of papers, which came out. Is only a very, very small part of what is there. There is much more.
The years that followed did not dim the memories nor diminish the pain for the victims' families. After Yosef Romano's death, his wife Ilana was left alone to raise their 3 daughters.
אושרת, רוחה, and שלומית הגיעו אליי ואני הייתי במיטה. והסתכלתי עליהם ואמרתי לקום, להראות שאני חזקה, או פשוט לתת לזמן לעשות את שלו.
When I was 6.5, I was very proud that my father going to represent Israel. It was really shocked that, to understand that he came back on coffin. For me, I'm living this moment every day.
Michal Shahar's father was Kahat Shor, the shooting coach for the 72 Israeli Olympic team.
I was at home in the morning. I open, like always, the news, and they're talking about the athletes at Munich. At this point, I didn't know that my father was one of them. Later in the day, somebody found me from the Olympic team in Israel, and they told me that my father was one of them. I was hoping that my father, it was a mistake.
Kahat Shor died at the airport.
It's very important to have a place which everybody could remember.
שיזכור. צריך לזכור את בניה של התנועה האולימפית שנרצחו במינכן למען הצדק ההיסטורי.
The surviving relatives have been struggling for over 4 decades to memorialize the tragedy of 72.
I went with Ilana and Anki, the 3 of us, to the Olympic Games Memorial in 76. This was the first time that we tried to make a change, moment of silence. But as you know, nothing happened.
When I beginning, I say, okay, 2 years, 4 years, 1 Olympic, and the second, and the third, and now 10.
We have been to all the Olympics, and every time the tune changed. First, they accused me of bringing politics into the Olympics. I said, I'm bringing politics into the Olympics? I said, if you don't want to say that they were Israelis, or Jews, you know, whatever. If you don't want to say that, then just say that 11 athletes who were part of the Olympic family were murdered, brutally murdered and tortured in the Olympic Village. And then the tune changed. In Athens in 2004, they said, that is too early. I said, what is this too early? What do you want me to come with a stick and being pushed in a wheelchair and then finally you're going to do it, you know? And then we went into London, and in London they said it is not appropriate to remember something so sad at the glorious, fun opening ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, please pause to respect our memorial wall.
When I looked at the opening ceremony in London, they mentioned, and rightly so, the 55 people that were killed in the metro.
For friends and family of those in the stadium that cannot be here tonight, thank you.
We have had so many lame excuses over the years.
And we have, I don't know the word to say, how frustrated we are.
43 years after the chilling events of the 20th Olympiad, the Bavarian government of Germany and the International Olympic Committee, along with the Foundation for Global Sports Development, have authorized a large-scale memorial to commemorate the victims of Munich 72.
I think it's totally appropriate that the Germans recognise that event with appropriate dignity on the site where it happened, which surely is the most significant. Where else would you go in the world to put this memorial other than the place where it happened?
Current IOC President Thomas Bach, along with his fellow committee members, have for the first time acknowledged the tragedy of the Israeli Olympians of 72.
I think Thomas Bach is doing here a great move.
Mehrere Dinge tun. Wir werden an die 12 Opfer erinnern. Wir werden ihnen ihre Gesichter, ihre Lebensgeschichten wiedergeben.
What's happened is a big present for us.
They are really sorry and they're really trying to do their best now.
The fact that Germany is showing this willingness now to honor the memories of these athletes, these coaches, the policemen too, who were lost, is important.
I think it's a big step, and I think that it's about time.
It's better late than sorry. It's better that it's there.
This is what I think should have happened a long time ago, but I'm very happy that it is going to happen now, so that future generations will also understand what happened.
We have to remember who we are. We have to remember where we came from. And we also know that you have to forget. Not forget, forgive. Forgive, but not forget.